You have to be agile to kind of stay in business, I think, and also to kind of stay current, stay relevant. But I think in terms of dealing with the unknowns, I think the thing is with projects, it's our business to make sure there's as little unknown as possible. Generally, I think if things jump out of the woodwork, it's because of a communication issue, whether that's internal with us or whether it's with the client. And sometimes that's us, sometimes it's the client, and sometimes it gets to the point with the client where you have to say no, or you have to kind of deal with it in a stronger way, which is rare. But being independent, it means we can kind of go down that route. But we will, we pride ourselves on making sure that our communication is great, that relationships are really strong with whoever we work with, and also internally. So it means that in theory that kind of thing shouldn't happen, but also when it does, if it's an unforeseen thing, particularly around kind of health or weather or those kind of things that are completely unpredictable, then we've got a tight enough team that know enough about what everyone else is doing that people pitch in.
Usually it's quite smooth, and yeah, as I said, we talk to each other a lot. If we're not all in the same room in person, we talk to each other on Slack. So if something does come up or there is a big issue and a project's overrunning, we can try and shift things around a little bit. We're quite flexible, and our clients are super flexible usually and quite understanding. So if we need more time, it works out okay at the moment.
At certain periods, particularly spring and autumn, when brands tend to spend bigger on websites or rebrands, that's when we need extra hands, and that tends to be kind of people of a decent level, tends to be senior people that we get in at those periods. Occasionally on the flip side, we might be doing rollout stuff for a rebrand or for a design piece where we'll get in more artworky creators or just extra pairs of hands to sort of take on work. We try and fill it with perm staff. We've found it's different because we've got a core team of designers who look after After Effects, General 4D, General VFX stuff, General 3D, and then we'll supplement them depending on what kind of production it is, whether it's live action, whether it's a heavy VFX piece, and get specific skill sets in. And that tends to be, those projects are more likely where we might work with someone remotely or even, in a different country and a different time zone. Whereas that doesn't happen so much with studio output. I have to say the only time we really do that is if we're working with illustrators abroad, which we do from time to time.
It's steady throughout the year most of the time. The only trough might be when we all jet off to Ibiza for the summer trip. But yeah, summer's quite busy, which is rare. I think some agencies become more quiet in August and stuff, but for us it's not like that, it's busy all the time. At the moment, overtime isn't a huge issue, although we have just done a 600-page book in, I think, 2 months or something, which is mad. So there were definitely some late-night deliveries with that. But usually we're quite good at plotting things well enough in advance, and our timelines are usually fairly manageable, that we don't usually have to do too much overtime.
I think it's always a danger. I think we've, over the years, always tried to foster an environment where people work hard when they're here, but they work hard in their contracted hours. So they've got a life, so they come back in refreshed the next day. It's not always possible because you've got to, sometimes we'll have more work on than the resource. Sometimes we'll have a project that actually everyone really wants to put the hours into. Sometimes we'll have a project where we need to put the hours into because it's not worked out or for whatever reason. But generally, I think there's a good balance, and I think it's the times of doing things on weekends are incredibly rare. I think in terms of projects, where it might happen is if we're doing an event or a shoot where that's done. But then we'll deal with that with make sure that the team on it are happy doing that. We make sure that they're haven't got other commitments, and also make sure that we're upfront and transparent about time off in lieu and things like that, so it's dealt with. Because there are times when people do get to that burnout stage, and it tends to be again because they've just got their head down and tried to deal with it and not shared it, and we've had to kind of just go in and say, look, let's talk about this, let's work it out. We're here to kind of make it work, because if that's happening, it's on my shoulders, and it's our problem to sort out, because that's not fair if people are in an environment where that's happening.